event. Can you go back a few slides? Yes, thank you. So the session will take around about 90 minutes. And of course, we accommodate a Q&A afterwards. If you prefer to ask questions directly to us, to Wolfgang or me, then at the end, please stay a little bit longer, and then you can ask your questions directly in case you don't want to discuss them in plenary. As always, the session will be recorded. After the session, we will share the slides with you and link to the recording. During the session, if you have any questions, please use the chat box, and then we will forward the questions and bring it up as soon as possible. And as I said, the slides will be shared via email at the end of the session. The speaker is Wolfgang Spies-Knafel. He works, as I said, at the European Center for Social Finance, which is based in Munich. And I won't say too much about Wolfgang and give him the opportunity to introduce himself. And let's talk a little bit about SIFTA. The European Commission has set up a program which is called InvestEU. And in this InvestEU advisory hub, there's a window for microfinance and social enterprise finance providers. And within this framework, there are different support activities we are hosting. One of them are learning opportunities like this webinar, workshops we host in person. Of course, there's an opportunity to get direct support through tailored training and technical assistance. And let's go to the next slide. So EIB, the European Investment Bank, is in charge of managing the SIFTA program. And the idea is to provide targeted capacity building, project advisory, market development support to financial intermediaries active in the microfinance and or social entrepreneurship space. The SIFTA program is a continuation of the program formerly called EASY, Technical Assistance. And basically it has two work streams that is, as I said, development services, advisory, and the other work stream is rating, assessment, and evaluation. Next slide, please. So who is eligible? Organizations who are based and registered in the EU 27 member states can apply for SIFTA services. The timeframe, the initial budget is available until end of December 2024. And as I've already said, beneficiaries are microfinance providers and social enterprise finance providers, and the whole range going from investment funds, impact investors, incubators, accelerators, and so on and so forth. The next slide, please. So the project is managed by Frankfurt School of Finance and Management. They are the consortium leader, and there are two consortium partners. That's the Microfinance Center, MFC, and the European Microfinance Network, EMN. And as I said, the other work stream, the rating, assessment, and evaluation services is provided by MFR Rating. In case you are interested in receiving additional services, then please send an email to sifta@eib.org, and then you will receive an application form, and it's a so-called request for service template, and which you have to complete. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to get in contact with us. We are happy to help you with the application or tell you more about the program. Next. Okay. So before we start, probably a little bit of a summary of what we discussed last week. Last week, we started with Fintech. What's Fintech? What's the technology behind it? What's all the buzz around AI? What kind of algorithms are used for different purposes? We did discussed some very relevant aspects, for example, ethical considerations, and for example, around credit scores and what kind of data is collected, how that could potentially increase the quality of portfolios, the quality of services, but also the negative aspects. So technology still can have a bias. Wolfgang used the famous gorilla example. I might have forgotten something, but Wolfgang, probably you can add a few things, and then over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Jörg. Good to be here again. Happy to see many of you again from last time. So what we discussed last time was mainly looking at the artificial side of things, artificial intelligence side of things. So like, what happens when you have like an avalanche of data, when you have like a lake of data? How can you analyze it? How can you use it? How can you think about setting up your data infrastructure? But also like, what are your responsibilities towards your clients? So how much should you be able to explain what you're doing? How much should you be able to explain your credit decisions? So, and those were the topics we discussed last time, but let me share my screen. So. Okay, so we talked about the data side. How can you analyze data? How can you analyze it? What are the benefits? How does data science work? How can you set up like how can you make use of these things? We are also talking about the SDG. How can you use data science to assess what you're doing towards the SDGs? And today we are moving towards the blockchain side of things and talk about blockchain-based business models, about verifiability, accountability, and also this idea of having different layers in the financial industry and how they work together. As we already said last time, our materials will be shared afterwards. Please jump in if you have any questions. So I don't want to talk for the next, I mean, I have like 60 or 70 slides, so I can talk for the next 2 hours. But if you have any comments, please jump in and let's have an interactive session. And if there's anything what you find interesting, please send in a message. And please put it in the chat, send me a message, and then we can also share it with the other participants. As Jörg said, we will share the slides afterwards, and also a link to the recording of the session. Quickly to myself, but I will just keep it short. I have a background in engineering, so this explains my passion for technology. But then also went into investment banking, so to try to combine technology and finance. And for the last 15 years, I've been working in the social finance area. Did my PhD. I did my PhD. Was working as a postdoc, and for the last years at the European Center for Social Finance. And I first came across the Bitcoin blockchain area in 2013 when we're looking at the market structures of the illicit or illegal markets. And this was like the biggest use case back then. How can you pay for drugs and other illicit goods on the internet, on the darknet? And the Bitcoin was obviously something that many people used. And let us also compare like what we've done last week and what we are doing this week. So if we look at artificial intelligence is like a probabilistic technology. So I think many of you are using ChatGPT, for example. What you're getting is the probability of the next output. So the model is estimating the probability for the next output in the sentence. So it's not deterministic, and every time you put in the same prompt, you might get a different response. All these models are basically centralized, mostly. So like the last 2 months, we've seen many competitive large language models which were open source. And then if you look at Hugging Face and all the tensor web, all the tensor open source models, that's quite decentralized. But many of the, if you look at the many of the large applications, for example, if you look at how Google uses it, it's like a black box. Nobody really knows how it works. It's also the nature of the technology, so that you don't understand how it came about. You can guess, you can estimate, but you don't really never know. And it's mostly a centralized technology held by a few big corporations. Blockchain, in contrast, is the complete opposite. It's decentralized. It's everything is open, so everything is open source. You can check every source code. You can check all the details. You can check the complete history. And it's also transparent. So everything is open for verification. Everything is open for scrutiny, which also makes it like which also increases the benefit or the interest in the technology. And then we also have something which is called like a deterministic approach. So that means whatever you put, and then we're coming to the smart contracts later. Whatever you put in your algorithm, it's like completely deterministic. So you can define what happens if this happens, then if A happens, then B happens as well. So that's something that you can really put into this area. And let us come back to the negative aspects before we go to the more positive side. A couple of things. So I would say the blockchain technology is something which is around since 2015, mostly, since the start of the Ethereum network. And we have seen a lot of experimentation, but as well as a lot of failures as well. So, for example, many people went out and said, "Well, we will revolutionize disaster relief payments." So we had a new protocol, a new standard for whatever happens after a disaster. But people said, "Well, everyone in Nepal will use our very complicated wallet." And of course, nobody did it. So maybe they had like 100 customers, and then nobody was really using it, and then there was like very little interest in doing these kind of things. But it's getting better. So people are nowadays using other approaches and things where you can have like more atomic networks. The same where people just assumed that everyone will use it. So they said 100% of the market will use our system, and of course, it's not something what is likely to happen. So a lot of like fantasy here. We also have to say that some were just unlucky. So, for example, there were some concepts in Afghanistan, and of course, when the Taliban took over, it was just like bad luck. Or the same with some pandemic effects, which disrupted many businesses. So we were last year. I was working on a stable coin for a philanthropic idea, and then if you like setting up the stable coin is quite easy. It takes you like a few 1 or 2 days from the technology side of things. But if you want to set it up like more seriously, you need like a team of 5 people at least, and millions in deposits. So because the stablecoin needs to be, I come to the technology side, and Jack asked me to do an introduction at the beginning about the technology. So we're coming there, but then you need like millions in deposit to make it work, and that's quite. The supervisory agencies have been a bit more stricter lately, which is also good. And then the same here. So it's not really So to use cryptocurrency, you need your wallet on your smartphone or on your laptop, and then how many people are really having a wallet on their smartphone? And at the moment, it's not that many who can access or you can receive cryptocurrencies. And of course, we have a new generation of blockchain protocols. Let me add another few things. First, and another what people also said is like, yes, it's a very expensive database, and you cannot store gigabytes in there. It's just like you usually store hashes or very short information. It's not meant to be like a Google Drive or a Dropbox. It's meant to be to secure transactions. We have also seen many nonsensical business models. So one of my favorite examples is two Russians who set up the banana coin in somewhere in Southeast Asia. And they said every banana would be like one, there would be one token for each banana, and then sell it to China with, I don't know. And it never, of course, it never made any sense, and they quickly disbanded it. Also, something what we're seeing is like people were just like they were just trying to replicate what worked quite well and to put it on a blockchain. And something what people often underestimate is like the level of energy consumption. So, for example, if you look at Bitcoin, the Bitcoin network, they are paying $250,000 every 10 minutes. So every 10 minutes, they're paying 250,000 euros to keep the network running. And of course, if you're paying minus $250,000 every or 1 million like every 40 minutes, of course they will spend a lot of this on the computing power and the related energy consumptions. And in some cases, it was as high as the energy consumption of Finland, or as high as I think another comparison was as high as the state of Washington. So it's really like expensive to run these networks. We have seen the cases where it was thought to be like used to undermine the sanctions against Russia. It's hard to say, but it's obviously it was possible to do it. And it's also like a preferred payment tool for illicit transactions in the darknet. There are a few interesting books on these areas. So, for example, the first mainstream adaptation happened via the Silk Road, where you could buy anything on the internet, and then you were paying it with Bitcoin. But why I like it? It's for a couple of things. So the first aspect is that it's a very secure. It's the most secure and permanent storage of information. So whatever you put on a blockchain, it's impossible to change the information once it's there. So it's really like it's impossible to change. Nobody can tamper with your data. And there are many use cases where you say, well, having the permanent security of the data is very valuable. For example, think about in the concept of social economy, think about service delivery of any social economy organization. Think about vaccinations, think about land ownership, anything where you need to show that you have delivered something is quite valuable to put there. And the other thing is that it's quite fascinating. It's like that you can pre-program algorithm. So that means that when you say if something happens, then another thing will happen as well. So if then statements, and you can put anything what you can determine. You can put any contract on the internet on the blockchain, and you have the certainty that it will be executed according to the conditions you have set. Maybe to give you some bit more context about the finance side of things is investors or individuals have committed 40 billion to the decentralized finance space. I'm usually a bit lazy to update this slide. Like it's usually like once a day. It's like changes from some like last year it was more than 100 billion. Then yesterday is 40 billion. So it's like a according to the ups and downs of the markets. But people put money there and um, and find protocols, and we're coming to them where you can invest and invest the money and use protocols. For example, they can lend money, they can invest, um, they can have swaps. So everything is quite possible. And they really seem to trust the technology. And why I'm saying that trust is because, and that's quite fascinating to consider here, is that there's no counterparty, there's no, so you cannot call anyone. So if you have a problem with your wallet or with your account, there's no one you can call. There's no one, there's no counterparty, there's no input or any other form of legal protection. Everything is governed by the code. So you have the code. So for example, this is like I'll show you some more examples later. So, but this is a form of a code which determines how your money is spent or not spent, or how you can stake your money, so that everything is in there, and which is quite nice. And I have another example showing you later, like how easy it is or how cheap it is to lend money. And I'll show you the examples then. Last week we were talking about the fintech industry, and the fintech industry is something about the composability. So you have like layers, and on top of each layer you have different services. And we can say the same here. So here we have something like a settlement layer. This is like the what people call the L1. So you have Ethereum, Solana, Polkadot, however you call them. So those are like the settlement layers where the transactions are secured and stored. And then you have all kind of asset layers. So this is like from a paper from 2021, but back then what was quite interesting was like all the ERC20. Those were all the new currencies or the NFTs. So NFTs were following this ERC 721 standard, and those are all the assets. And then what you can do is, on top of the settlement layer and the asset layer, you have the protocol layer. So, and this protocol layer says what happens with the assets I own. So that, for example, you can say, well, I own Ether or Bitcoin or whatever currency you're owning, and then you can give it to exchange, or you can give it to a lending platform. And on this lending platform, you can do all kind of other things. You can swap, you can give it to others, and then you can earn interest. And we're coming to more social economy um, um, more social economy applications later. But this shows like the different levels of, of activities. Let's go to the next one. And this is something, and I know many of you are coming from the lending side. This is what the blockchain industry has achieved to do. So, for example, here you can go there, and then you can people can lend your so you can lend money, and if you lend money, what you do is you have to collateralize your position. So you go and then you have to put a collateral. It's a bit like going to your bank and you need to put a collateral for your housing mortgage, for example. And then you also pay some kind of stability fee. And what they do, and what I find quite interesting here, is they have I've looked it up in the last annual report they had. They have annual cost of 10 million, but handle 17 billion in assets. So they have 17 billion what they give out in assets, and pay like, what is it, 0.1% in operating costs, less than 0.1 operating costs, which is quite fascinating. So it's just like you write your algorithm, your smart contracts. People come to you, put in a collateral, and then you can give you lend them something different. Or you lend them, like what you do is you lend them like a US dollar stable coin, and they can use it to do whatever you want, which is quite interesting, like as a concept, how you can handle that many assets that cheaply. And then you have like so what you do is like minimum collateralization ratio, as well as the stability fee you have to pay, and this changes like, and which is also quite interesting. So they have like a governance system where everyone who owns the governance token can decide on which token they should use, what are the ratios they should accept, what are the fees they should consider, um, and this um, and this of course like increases the attractiveness or the risk level of the exchange. But overall, they're usually over collateralized. It's not that risky for them. Also something what is quite interesting, there's been zero downtime for the underlying technology. So for example, Bitcoin or Ethereum, they have been running since the start. So even when they changed the consensus mechanism, there wasn't anything which changed so there was no downtime there, which is quite fascinating. If you think about the technology, which has been online since 2009 without any downtime, it's like a 100% 100% um, availability, which is higher than AWS, for example. So they only promise you 99.9%, but not 100%. The problem is that all other things, like all exchanges or bridges or DAOs, they have been hacked in the past. So the architecture on top is problematic, but is also improving. And so just a few examples. If you just look for Web3 or blockchain and hack, and then it's usually like every week someone has stolen like millions or hundreds of millions of dollars. The other thing which is quite interesting is that everyone has the same information at the same time. So this is like the magic of this blockchain technology is if that you can be sure that everyone has the same information at the same time, and everyone has the same rights. So it's not that you need to rely on some third party, but it's really like if you go there, you can you have the same information as everyone else. So no one has any kind of 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 prior knowledge than you. And it's also I would say the most exciting space for new market designs. And what is quite interesting is that you have like some form of cash, and then you can say like this cash, what happens with this currency or token or cash, however you want to define it, is totally transparent, and you can always say like what happened with this. And what you can also do is like you can put in any incentive structure. So you can say if in my community someone donates time, and we also show you this example later, is if someone donates time to a third person, you can give another token to this person. And the token doesn't have to be euro, but it can be like any kind of appreciation tools you can show. And in the past, which is also quite interesting, is in the past what people did was basically they said like what worked well in the real world, and then they said, oh, we just put it on the blockchain. And of course, many of these things really didn't work out because they already worked quite well. And what we see in the current waves is that people are a bit more innovative, a bit more creative, and really create new markets, create new schemes, create new forms of business models, which are also more meaningful for the participants or for the industry. Let's go here. Let me quickly go into the technology and what it is. The blockchain, another name for blockchain technology is the distributed ledger technology, DLT. And this is also like the main point of the technology is they're saying, well, we don't want to have a society which relies on individuals who are controlling central ledgers. So, for example, um, yeah, well, let me say it differently. In our history, um, so if you go back and look at the earliest writing, it's usually found in temples and some form of ledgers where people kept like who owns which cattle and who owns which who has which ownerships, who has to pay which taxes. I'm exaggerating a bit, but it's like many of the earliest forms of writing were like record keeping of some form in temples, in central administrative offices. And we also have it today, like wherever you go, you're somewhere in a ledger. So you have your bank ledger, you have your fitness club, you have your supermarket ledger, you have when you go on the when you show your passport, that's a ledger. When you um, when you get an email from EMN, you're part of a ledger. So everyone has some form of database. And what is the problem is here is that's usually a single point of failure and a single point of trust. So you need to trust that the one who is controlling the data is trustworthy and has good intentions, which is perfectly fine in most cases. But still, it's something that people said we need to do better, and we need to find ways how we can distribute the ownership of very important data to like the collective, to some form of collective ownership. And this is like the main point of the blockchain technology is saying how can you distribute the ownership of very important data to a more decentralized or distributed ownership. And that's also like if you look at some of the definitions, it's also like the main point of all the definitions of saying that um, that we are that you can store information. The information is distributed among users, and then you can use it to settle transfers. It's also this same here from the Davidson. It's distributed. It's cryptographically secure, and also talking about this crypto-economically incentivized consensus engine. Or here the next one saying that it's decentral, it's reliable, and it's cryptographically encrypted. So this is like the main parts here. Then we go further on the next slide. It wasn't the technology. The blockchain technology is a set of different technologies, which all needed to come together to create this form of digital storage of cache or important information. And if you think about cache is just an entry in a form of database. So you have you can show that this part. So for example, if you look at Bitcoin, you own the entry in the database showing that you own one of the 20 something million Bitcoins, and it's just like an entry in this database. So this can be anything. And what we needed to have here is we need to have like digital cache. We need to have a linked timestamping, and blockchain just means like a chain of different blocks of information. Some kind of consensus mechanism. This Byzantine fault tolerance, meaning that you can also make mistakes in how things are set up, and then you can also have like malicious actors. But if you have them, it's not too problematic. You can cover that. Also having the smart keys and smart contracts. The blockchain technology looks like this. So blockchain means you have a chain of blocks, and in each block you store all the information in there. So you have a list of transactions, you have a state of who owns which wallet or which account owns which amount of Bitcoins. And then what you do is you create a hash of this block data, and then you store it in the header. So and then you can always check if this has been tampered. And the underlying technology is what people call a one-way function, is that you can hash any form of information. This is also something what you have in your password. When you encrypt your passwords, you usually store a hash of your password. You don't store the password, but you store a hash of your password, and this shows it quite well. Is, for example, if I have this sentence here, this is example A, you get this hash, and if you just change one single letter here, you have a very different hash here, and it's impossible. It's not impossible, but it's very. It takes a lot of time to reverse this hash function here, and that's why it's quite secure. If we look at the what is written in there, so this is the information we have here. So we have the hash of the transactions, we have the timestamp, we have the height, the number of blocks, the miner who was rewarded, the number of transactions in this 10 minutes, the difficulty of the proof of work, the Merkle root, the nonce, as well as some transaction volumes. And what is quite interesting here is if you look at it, the miner who solved the equation, they received 6.5 Bitcoins, and this was back at this time it was worth like 275,000 US dollars. So in total, if you add this one, like say $300,000 just for solving a single equation, which also explains why people say this is like just too much energy what they're using to solve these puzzles. But it's driven by the price of the Bitcoin. So the higher the price, the higher the incentive. And the block rewards are decreasing over time. So we can so it's like there's like some deflationary aspect here, but over time it gets lower. And those are like two ways how you can show that you have done the your work. So it is either proof of work, so where you need the thing is that you need to secure the integrity of your database. And the integrity of your database is secured because only people who are, in this case, only people who have spent like a lot of computing power can write the next block. And they are rewarded for this, for this, for the work. And hackers would need, so if you want to hack, for example, Bitcoin, you would need like 51% of the network to add like a block which is like corrupted. But then again, it's like people say you need to work like 60 minutes until you verify the block. So you would need like, so this would be quite impossible to hack, and nobody has achieved it so far. The other one, which makes more sense, is the proof of stake. So for example, what Ethereum is using. So they are saying it's you don't need to calculate, you don't need to spend computing power. You can say you can you need to buy a stake of the currency, and then you will be asked to validate a certain block, and then this is like randomly allocated. And the same here, you would need to own 51% of the network to change any transactions. If you have any questions, just put them in the chat, or add something. Also something what we see here is the the list of how you can set up your own smart contracts. And the interesting part here is that you can create your own contract, and then you can find a counterparty. And the counterparty says, well, if it rains in Vienna today, I pay you 50 euros or whatever. And then you can just say, well, you can just write your smart contract and saying, well, if this happens, and then you have some kind of oracle which brings the data into the setting, then you can say, well, if this happens, I pay 50 euros to you in your account. and I mean, nobody does the weather thing except if you're an insurance company, but you can imagine all the different settings. So if you think about your microfinance settings, you can say, well, if the client achieves this, then you can pay out, or he pays you, or you can set up some kind of 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 of, of incentive or payout according to your preferences here. There are also some limits. So like in principle, you can imagine you can buy everything on the market. So you can contract everything on the market, but it doesn't make always a lot of sense. So and in this way, the smart contracts need like a very deterministic environment. So there cannot be any uncertainties. So for example, if you do the weather contract and then it's not raining but it's snowing and you haven't predefined it before, like you don't really know what the contract wouldn't work because you wouldn't know what happens there. And there are some concepts, and I show it later. For example, Claros, where they say they have some humans which then take the decision if the contract wasn't clear enough for any kind of payout. And this is, and also I can also show you later some examples how you can set up your own token. It's usually just a couple of lines. So this is setting up your a vending machine where you say if you put in some coins, you can get this and that, and this is everything what you need. Um, the code also needs to be quite lean because it runs on like thousands of computers. So you cannot afford to spend too much. You shouldn't have too much code because then it gets like very expensive. We have some blockchains which are expensive, for example, Ethereum, but others not. And Fiorella has a question. So many are now moving away from Ethereum because it's too expensive. It's like you cannot have a business model which goes that far. Solana, for example, is quite cheap, so you pay like a fraction of cents for transactions. But then again, it depends on how you on what are your preferences, what is your ecosystem, because you also need some kind of ecosystem which works together. But of course, there's like a tendency to lower the transaction costs in this area. Fiorella, I hope that answered your questions. But I would at the moment I would prefer some cheaper options like Solana to do that. Okay. What I said before is like the fascinating thing is that you can structure everything. So there's no limit to your imagination, and there are different forms how you can set it up. So for example, you can have your own currency, you can have some kind of equity token where you see, well, which is tricky with the SEC, for example, in the US, so that you don't like those forms of token because you would need to register with the authorities, and nobody ever did it. But still, so this is all feasible. You can have like some kind of funding token where you say you have a protocol, for example, with MakerDAO, people invested, then they had some kind of equity or governance token, which increased in value depending on the profitability of the protocol. Um, um, the voting token is something like a governance token, which gives you voting rights on the protocol, or all kind of other forms. So like the asset token, which would be like something like the NFT, where you say this is what you are. So you can claim your ownership of a certain digital asset or a physical asset stored in some way or another. So good. So we are like we have covered the first quarter. Now, like we are more or less in the half of our session. Let me know if you have any questions or comments so far. Okay, let's move on. The blockchain technology was always something about money. It was also about how you can structure flows, how you can get money from A to B. And this is something what I found quite which shows the feature quite nice here, is at the beginning of the of the of the um, of the Ukraine war, the Russian invasion in Ukraine, the Ukraine government put up a tweet where they said, this is like if you want to donate to the Ukrainian Republic or war efforts, you can just use these two wallets on Bitcoin or Ethereum, and then you can support what we're doing. And the interesting thing is, like, you can check every single transaction. Every single transaction, you can verify every single transaction. So you know, like, who donated which amount, and you can, I mean, there's no name to the wallet, but you can see you can see every one of the 72,000 transactions, which is quite a lot here. You can see every one of them, which is not possible if you look at any other form of donation or donation platform, that you know who was the person who gave you this money. And this is really something like a new level of transparency. And there are forms of analytics here, so you can see who has done what was the highest value, what was the lowest value, when did the interest stop, and then you can really see like how how it changed. And in terms of like checking and verifying data, it's quite nice. And also, like, it increases the trust. So if people know how much money have you received, because everything is public, it's also something what we in the social economy need much more, is like having this high level of, I mean, we have a lot of it, but even more would be quite nice, like showing like this was the amount of donations which came to this account, and so on and so forth. The UNICEF also created like a UNICEF crypt fund, where everyone could donate to this prototype fund. And then what you can do is you can see who were the persons who were donating to this crypto fund. But more interestingly, you can also check. So, for example, you can click here, and then you can see the transaction details. Did this really go to this organization? And then you can check like what happened with the money. So you cannot verify like how they spend it in the local currency, but you can check if this wallet has received the amount of capital as promised. And then if you click on this link, I put in here um, like the screenshot, and then you can see when it was transferred, what was the timestamp, which wallet sent it to which another wallet. also transaction fees, which are quite cheap then, and um, um, quite quite some information here to see, which doesn't exist in the traditional settings. You would just need to rely on these settings. There are many of these donation platforms. So, for example, GiftTrack is something where they do the same. So everyone needs to have like, so you can check like how much money has flown to which organizations, and then you can see like uh, who has given, how much came together. In this case, like probably 10,000 euros, and then how much of it was transferred to the to the organization. And then the same here is like something why people like it a lot is like this programmability of money. So you can say pay out the money once a certain milestone is achieved. So you can say, and we are coming back to these examples later, is that you can say, well, if you achieve a certain milestone, you're getting paid. So, and this is like everything is perfectly fine, and then you can set up your own protocols here. Something what I also wanted to share with you is like the design space. Which is the most fascinating part for me is like those are the everything what you have here is perfectly feasible. So let me start here. So you have the absolute data and process security. So whatever you put in there, it's absolutely secure. It's never been hacked. That's all what you can put in there. You have this automatic processes, so you can people don't know each other, but you can trust that the code will be executed as it's been written there. Also, this audit trail and transaction history. So, for example, we have many cases now where people get arrested for something what they did like 10 years ago, because the information is still there, and we still have the perfect transaction history. Another part is this open source aspect, so that you can say whatever happens is totally open source, and you can check all the codes, and you can combine it with platforms, so with currencies and payments. So you can say, and later I'll show you an example of a community protocol where you have your own currency, which you use to incentivize people to work on something. And then you have the community owned and operated aspect. So there's like no Bill Gates or someone. So it's owned by the community. Everyone has like the same voting rights, and it's all managed by protocols. Let's imagine like a big Wikipedia, where you have like collective efforts. Of course, there's some teams and so on, but it's like more of a decentralized community. That's my definition I currently use here, is saying that it has the potential to combine economic incentives, so being paid in a predetermined way, and instantly. So whenever happens something, you are paid like depending on how long it takes, but not more than 10 minutes afterwards, which is also quite nice. So you have something happens, and then you're paid in the next 10 minutes. I can show you I have examples here. I did like a literature review to prepare this session, and then if you look at the blockchain for good area, so those are usually the ways, the aspects we are seeing. So you say we want to create greater transparency. So even for you, if you want to if you want to implement blockchain solutions, and then we are also showing you some very simple examples. It's something where transparency is like a key issue. It's also something for the establishment of identities. Distributing aid is something what we see a lot. value chains. So I'll show you the example of provenance later, where you store information according to your supply chains. Disaster relief, decentralized autonomous organizations, voting system, food safety. And let me start with a very simple example. So this is something that all of us see like every day. Imagine that you are funding social economy organizations and want to make sure that the funding is used for green or social purposes. The first thing you're looking at is like, how can you make sure, like, how do you make sure that there's some form of reporting compliance, so that people deliver their data as agreed? How can you make sure that the money is really used as it should? And I can show you a nice example which shows like the power of this of the blockchain entries here. is HEHAB. HEHAB is a French organization, and what they do is, if someone is a victim of domestic violence, and in many cases they cannot leave their homes. So because the people, usually the husband who is treating the wives badly, is usually locking them somewhere. And then what they can do is they can use their smartphone and make a recording of their injuries. And what it does is that they make a timestamp of the video. So you upload the video, there's a timestamp with the original GPS data and the and the time, and it's actually valid in court. So if you go to court later, they can use this as evidence, which is completely accepted. Adrian, thank you for your question. Yeah, that's exactly the point. So that you can show that there's been that hasn't been manipulated. It's the same thing here with the Ukraine war crimes, or with war efforts. So so there's a Syrian war archive, and the same as the Ukraine. And what they do is like they take evidence of war crimes and store the pictures together with a timestamp in a blockchain environment. I don't know which technology they're using, but what they do is like they put the hash of the video, of the image on a blockchain, and then you can show that this video then you can show that you can verify the authenticity of the images, and that nobody has tampered it afterwards. So if you have the proof of the images, you can store a hash of the data, and then you can use it in international courts, for example. And this would be like, this is one of the major issues for wars, that you cannot really trust the evidence. I mean, look at any kind of like what you see in social media, like how can you trust the images? But then if you are able to upload images and put a timestamp on it, and then you can say this has been timestamped and shown to be at this time. This is really like a powerful way to bring justice to wars. And the same here with domestic violence. So then you can so they use it in a blockchain environment. And then what they are doing is, once you go to court, they unlock your recordings, and then you can use the recording for the court proceedings, which is like a powerful way to use the technology. And also like and this is something what you can use in. So for example, we are now working on something, and we've done that, is that if you have surveys, for example, is that you store the hash of the raw data on the blockchain, so that you have the hash. So you know, so you store a fingerprint of the raw data at the time when it was collected, and then you can be sure that nobody has tampered or changed the data afterwards, which is also something what is quite nice here, so that you can be sure that the data was as it was recorded in the first time. So we had this one here. Something what is also in this direction is is when you say, well, we are looking. Let me go here. So when you say, let's take the example that you are providing a certain service, or you're willing to pay for a certain service. Let's say you are a foundation and you're willing to pay 20 euros per night for each homeless person, or you're paying for 100 euros per month for, I don't know, for afternoon education or for vaccination or whatever kind of service you're providing. And then you can say, you can set up like a protocol, or you can set up a market. And then you can say, whenever any kind of social organization achieves this goal, I am willing to, there's just like an automatic payment. So people come, and then you probably need to pre-filter them. But anyone who comes can apply, can say, well, I've achieved this, this incentive, or I've achieved this goal, and then I want to be paid according to the requirements you set up here. And what you can do, and this exists, is that you can say, well, if you validate the payment, you can trigger the payment, and then you pay out the you pay out whatever you have agreed on, and then the protocol also reports the impact data to the market maker, which would be the foundation. So basically what you're saying is, I have a pool of capital, and I want to distribute the pool of capital according to predefined criteria, and I don't really care about who it is. So there's no name recognition here. I just want the organization to be innovative, and so whoever comes and says, well, this is something what we want to achieve, this is something what we have done, the money is being paid out. Of course, what you need here is you need some kind of validator, because otherwise everyone can come. You can imagine that you upload a picture, that you have some kind of external validator. You can imagine a survey. You can imagine, I don't know, a video, and then you have something what you can show. I see there's a question in the chat. Yeah, thank you, Fiorella, for your question on the KYC. I think we have it on both sides. So that if you, for example, if you look here on the social organizations, so what you would do in practice is that you, to access the money, you would need some kind of you need to fill out some forms. So you need to pre-qualify. So then you say everyone who wants to participate in the scheme should pre-qualify, and then you can participate in the scheme. So I think this is something what you need to do here. And on the market maker platform, I would say yes, you would need some form of KYC. But I've seen all examples here. For example, if you look at the Ukraine example, it was just like anyone just sent the money. But in many cases, you would probably need, it would be like, I'm not a lawyer, but it would be legal advice to to do it this way. Otherwise, there could be some issues. Thank you for the question. And then if we look at the business models we are seeing here is, as I said, it's like a lot of like of experimentation. So this is something what I've seen in what they tried in Lebanon, where they said, well, if you want to support the forest in Lebanon, you can you can get a SETA coin, but it was just something what you get via email, and then it wasn't really successful. So we had this one here, and just the example what you had before. But again, it's like you need to think about ways how you can make it less expensive. And then I've seen some examples where the impact assessment of vaccinations was more expensive than the vaccination itself. So this isn't like you shouldn't, like, the overhead shouldn't be more expensive than the actual service delivery. But this is something where things are getting less expensive over time, and then you're also getting more more efficient. So for example, if you do solar panels, and then you fund solar panels, like, why shouldn't you use solar satellite data to verify the delivery of the services, like what we discussed last time? Or if you, there are ways how you can access sensor data, satellite data, other forms of of verification which are cheaper than others. Another example which I like quite a lot is Claros. It's a French-based enterprise. The one who's running it is living in Buenos Aires, but it's actually a French cooperative. And what they do is they offer some form of human judgment. So we had the case before where a smart contract is not really predefined in every single aspect. And then what they offer here is they offer human jurors to say if something is the case or not. And in this case, there was dispute if Joe Biden really won the presidential election. Some people said, "Oh no, he didn't win it." And then they had like an internal panel where they discussed if the 2.5 million here, if the 2.5 million should be allocated to the winners or not. And the fascinating thing again is here how they do it. Is what they do is you have a dispute between two persons, let's say between a freelancer in Thailand and the client in Germany, for example, and then you wouldn't go to a court. You need some more efficient and cheaper way how you can solve the issues. And what you do is like a digital court with all kind of ethical issues, of course, but it's still like they offer a free way. It's not free, but it's like a cheaper way to solve issues. And what they do here is is the following: you have, in this case, 7 humans, 7 persons. And then the 7 persons need to decide on the outcome of the case. And what each of them does is, so they're completely anonymous, nobody knows each other, and there's no other interaction. And what they do is they put money on their outcome, on their results, and they are only being paid if their judgment is part of the majority opinion. So it's if they so you're paying, it's like a game theoretic approach. So you are paying people only in case if they are part of the majority opinion. So it means that the individual needs to consider how the majority would vote in this case. And because they're putting money in on their decision, it also increases the likelihood that it leads to better outcomes. And so far it works quite nicely, and it's also a nice. It shows like what you can do, and you need a blockchain because you need to stake money. So people need to put in the cryptocurrency Claros, and you need to allocate the capital afterwards. So if you're not part of the majority opinion, you are losing your deposits in this case. The jurors, thank you for your question, is that um, that you are randomly selected. So you have a pool of, let me see, you have a pool of 750 jurors. So for each case, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 5, 7, 9 are chosen, and then each one of them needs to put in money or stake the money, and then consider if what you're doing is part of the majority opinion. And it's like part of the academic literature, and they have shown that this is how it can work in practice. Like otherwise, you can just say, I wouldn't read the. So otherwise, if you have no sanctions, people can say, well, I just take the money, and then I say it's party A is guilty, and then I just say it. But you want to make sure that people are reading the materials. So and then you're asking them if what they're doing, and there are no criminal, like real criminal cases. It's just like commercial disputes or something like who is like who won the presidential election. So those kinds of aspects. Adrian, on the gambling, yeah, of course, it's like a gambling. If like if you're part of the majority opinion, you're winning, and then you need to see like who is which side to take. But you have an interesting book. It's open. It's an ebook on the website, and check it out. It's quite interesting to read.
Yeah, it was quite interesting. All the examples that you kind of provided. It seems for me that the blockchain solves a lot of things, but not a specific problem. Seems like a solution for a problem that doesn't exist, you know. And it's interesting how you put so many examples of potential problems that can be solved.
Yeah, but for example, the timestamp, the fingerprint is something what is used in like thousands of cases. So people don't say it's like blockchain, but they use it. And then you have something which is valid in courts. I agree with you. Nobody needs a banana coin where you put a banana on a blockchain. So that's like nonsense. But many of the cases, it's really like people are using it. They are not saying it's blockchain, but they use the blockchain technology to deliver the services and increase the trust in the systems.
I'm curious, one question. Why do you think is not necessarily uh, so popular, so accepted by companies? This kind of the blockchain solution somehow, it seems that things are easier, life is easier, and everything is transparent. Why do you think it's such a hard embracement of this kind of technology?
Um,
No, from the governments, from the public.
So, for example, if you look at the central bank digital currencies, they are coming. So they are using the digital cash. It depends like what kind of version you're using, but this programmability of cash, like saying that you can put cash into any form of smart contracts, and then you can just decide what happens. It's like a strong motive. Also, the cryptography behind blockchain is something what is used in many use cases. I think what people don't like is this fraud, this darknet, this this illicit business models, this spams. You know, people see on the on the Facebook feed like all forms of scam, and then just put the money in blockchain, and then it's double like every 2 minutes. Of course, people don't like that and don't want to be associated with these aspects. But for example, if you want to secure your your data, and then you want to have data which is like valid in courts, you need to use some kind of blockchain solutions. And then you don't need to say that you use it, but so for example, if you look here at HeHub, it's a block model, but they are not putting it anywhere it's like on the whole website they're using it once or twice, but like everything what they do is like a blockchain-based business model, but they're not using it in their communication. And the same thing maybe here with provenance. Let me jump a bit. Provenance is so what they do is like it's a way how you can prove where your goods came from, but it's so everything is auditable, immutable, decentralized, but they wouldn't say it's blockchain. It's just I mean I know that they use it, but they wouldn't put it there because it's not how they want to be understood by the market. And yeah, I mean the proof points, and then you can show what the so you have some kind of blockchain entry, but they wouldn't say that they're using it. So underneath the surface, many are using these technologies, but it's not that popular to say that you're a blockchain model. The same here. So for example, this is like an Italian. It's Unrun, and what they're using is, and that's why I like the idea behind blockchain is that you can structure any form of community involvement. And in this case, they set up like a local network where you incentivize people to create and donate time and work together with the community, and then having all forms of interactions between your members. And this is perfectly feasible if you and in this case you can integrate the users, you can integrate communities and companies and foundations and sector associations and use them for all kind of services. Or here, so there's something what the World Food Program did like 2016. So this was like at the beginning of the Ethereum, like when Ethereum came, started to be operative. And then what they did is like that each one of these persons had like a blockchain-based account, which was activated by their by an IceCam. And what they did is was like they were just securing the accounts on a blockchain account, and then you could use it to buy foods. But they haven't really so they have experimented with this, but they really haven't kept it like ongoing. But they have like I guess they also have like an innovation lab where they're trying to set up new new forms of innovations. And then so we had this one, and then I have 4 more minutes left. I understood, Jörg. But so like
you have all the time you need.
Okay. No, I said like 1 hour 15, and then so on my clock it's like 3 minutes left. And maybe the last thing is, and coming back to you, Adrian, is again here this example. This is a big green DAO, and what they are doing is quite nice. So these say we provide it's an US it's an US it's an US NGO, and what they do is like they fund all kind of learning community gardens and food literacy programs. And what they did is they set up like a new organization, and they said we do like an DAO, like a decentralized autonomous organization. And what is quite nice here is this form, like what you did is like they said we have our committee, and the committee can decide who gets the funding. And the nice thing here is that every time you get a funding, you also get a governance token. So it means it's really like this distributed decision making. So they say, well, we provide the money, but we want those who are in the field and who are creating these learning gardens and doing the field work, that they are also deciding on who are the next persons to receive the funding, which is quite nice when you think about it. And the other thing is that you can set up all kind of voting mechanisms. So, for example, you say, well, we use ranked choice voting or quadratic voting, which means like if you put people on number one, you increase the organizations which are put on number one like have a quadratically have a higher probability that they are chosen. So that you can also say like those who are number one also get the money, but maybe those who are like 5 times the number 3 probably not. So you can use all kind of voting systems how you can set it up, and and then you also can keep some of the original voting to your committee, which is like a nice way to have some form of collective decision making, and also being totally transparent so people know. So you can check like who voted in which way, and then you can check like how did individuals like select which organizations, how was the capital allocated, and that's all what you can do with these DAOs. And then you can see here like who are the organizations, what are the numbers of positive votes. I'm not sure about the seats, we need to check it again. But then you can also see like the grants allocated, and then you can see how this was done in practice. And that's also my last slide, Jörg. Hope it was a bit interesting.
As always, I really like the level of depth. I would open the floor to questions. If there are any questions, now might be a good time to ask them.
Yeah, one question from my side. You mentioned something very interesting, Wolfgang, the aspect that nobody tried to hack the blockchain. That was interesting for my mind. Why is that? Why do you think nobody tried that?
I'm not sure about the smaller ones. Maybe there are some, like if, for example, if you look at Bitcoin. So what you would need at Bitcoin is you would need to invest probably 200,000 euros in energy costs for 10 minutes. So you would need to invest 200, and to hack it means, I mean, you can always hack like one, like you have different blocks, and then you can hack one block, but then if the block isn't found to be, if there's no integrity in this block, it's just dependent and the chain continues somewhere else. So this is feasible. So it means that a malicious hacker could hack like once, but then I mean this could be random. But if you really want to do it like to really change and corrupt it, and then you would need to you would need to have like the 1 hour you have to make your transactions. Like otherwise it can be like there's usually like different change, and then it just changes back to the other one. But you would need like an enormous amount of electricity to get to make it work. So it means you would need like, I don't know, like 1 million in energy costs, and you would need to have the GPUs to have the computing power, and then you would need to have the the computing power as well as the cost, and this would be quite expensive, and you cannot do. You would need ways how you can take the bitcoins out of the system. So this is the other thing. And then for proof of stake, it means that, for example, for Ethereum, I'm not sure how much do you have staked now, but it's probably a few billions. So you would need to buy a few billions in Ether to really hack the system. And you need to find a good way how you can put it out there. But it also means that you that you that you that you put your own stake at risk, so that the value of your own stake decreases. So it's like not very economically interesting to do that. But yes, on the smaller systems, on the protocols. So for example, if no one is voting, so that's where many hacks are happening. Is if there are just like 5 people voting, and then you can vote on a change to the protocol, and then you can just say, well, transfer the money in somewhere in another location. That's perfectly. This has been done quite often, and this is like a risky part. The
We
other
have questions in the chat.
Yeah, the question from Fiorella. So not profitable for the big ones. Yes, I would say that's. I mean, if you can hack the Bitcoin and be successful, I think that's quite interesting. But it would be like a major feat to get. Maybe if you have some kind of, if you're the first one to use quantum computers to solve the solutions, this could be feasible. But other than that, I think it's quite tricky. And the other question was from you, Fiorella, about the blockchain and AI hype. Yeah, it's like both industry have seen like the hype, like the hype cycles, and there is always like a lot of interest and like people call a blockchain summer or blockchain winter. Um, and personally, I think that it could be quite interesting to combine both technologies, in the sense that what is annoying about AI is that AI is owned by the big corporations. There's some open source models, of course, but if you want to put your data, so for example, just yesterday I've seen that Dropbox has in their terms of conditions that they can use your data for large language models. And then your data just ends up somewhere, which is like a nightmare. And I think having your own data, trading your own data, and being paid for that your own data is used for the development of these models is something which is fair. And I think this is something which could be quite interesting. So where you have like a token, where you have like, if you contribute the data to development of the training, you are being paid, and some things like this could be interesting. And maybe another thing is that if you for AI is, if you have agents, like let's say you're in the airline industry, and then you have your luggage, and the luggage is going from a Munich airport to the let's say to Paris, and then there are different agents which are communicating how the luggage should be routed, and then there could be cases where you are being paid if your luggage can be delayed, and then if all these agents are interacting, you should be paid for whatever comes next. And this is something that could be quite interesting. But in principle, both technology are very different in a way that the one is deterministic and lean, and the other one is like quite large and probabilistic, which makes things complicated. But I think having like different agents or robots communicating and then paying you for whatever happens, I think this could be quite interesting.
I would have one final question, if I may. Do you have kind of a recommendation, a tip? If I were a microfinance organization, social finance providers, and I haven't been really involved in technology or make a big jump, what would be your tip where to start? What would be my starting point?
Well, what I would do is like it really costs it's quite cheap to do, is like taking my data and storing a hash of my data just for future verification. I think that's one of the easiest things to do. So whenever someone reports data, and then one of your microfinance clients sends you data, that you store a hash of the data, and then you can say, well, I am sure that the data, I can always check like what happened to the data. And so, for example, if you look at the way how data can be changed, I'm not saying manipulated, but it's nice to know that data is as accurate as possible. I think that's perfectly fine. um, I think that microfinance, the other thing is that there are many ways how you can reduce the operating costs. I think there's like, especially if you look at the fintech area. So for example, if you are able to provide services at like a fraction of a cent, it's like more expensive, but there are ways how you can really decrease the costs of your services. That's really something what is also quite interesting, and just looking at how you can compose different services, how you can use different services to do that, and just looking at things like a KWC check, if you can outsource that for like €2, I think that's always something that is quite nice. I mean, you need to check, you need to have the relationship, of course, but there are many aspects where you can use, where you can compose different aspects of your business.
Thank you. Before we close the session, again, the invitation, if you want to ask a question directly to Wolfgang or me, we will stay here for a couple of minutes. Other than that, I would really like to thank you for joining us today. And we have a great program in the pipeline, which we are going to announce hopefully early January. And I hope we will see you there again. Until then, have a fantastic time. Enjoy the holiday season and Happy New Year.
Thank you. And Merry Christmas as well.
And Merry Christmas.
I think we can remove Junida.
Yeah.